Thank you for joining. Welcome to Eurotech Talks, where Europeans and Americans connect to talk tech. Our program today is Unleashing the Future of IoT with AI, Edge, and 5G. My name is Erin McKelvey, Executive Director of the European American Chamber of Commerce, Texas. The EACC Texas provides its members with access to transatlantic business opportunities, as well as timely and relevant information, resources, and support on matters affecting business activities between Europe and the US. We are delighted to welcome you today. This program is being recorded and will be shared in a follow-up email. If you have questions for our speakers, please use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Now I'm pleased to introduce your moderator, Claire Burgaud. Claire is Manager of Partners and Ecosystems Marketing at NOKIA, with more than 25 years experience in management and IT consulting, business development, and sales and marketing for leading companies across diverse B2B industries. With her significant engineering and marketing expertise, she thrives in a fast-paced environment that leverages new technologies, co-creation, innovation, and diversity. She is currently based in Dallas, Texas, and spends her free time volunteering for the Dallas International School, our Chamber of Commerce, and Women in Tech organizations. I will now hand the program over to Claire, who will introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Erin, and good morning, afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today and to introduce and welcome our speakers and industry experts. Andrea Austin, Vice President Sales North America, Cloud and Network Services at NOKIA, Dr. Jason Cooley, Chief Innovation Officer in FRISCO, Olivier Bloch, Principal Program Manager at Microsoft, and Bob DeArmond, Government Solutions Expert at T-Mobile. With experience spanning over 20 years, Andrea is a seasoned leader in building high-performance teams to resolve complex business challenges in the field of emerging technologies. At NOKIA Cloud and Network Services, Andrea leads as the Vice President of Sales for North America, which includes NOKIA IoT solutions and IoT platforms. She has been recognized for her leadership by Women in Sales North America and has been named to lists of the top 50 women in revenue and in the top 35 influential women in sales. So welcome, Andrea. Jason is currently the Chief Innovation Officer for the city of FRISCO, Texas. In this role, Jason leads the advancement of smart city technology and municipal innovation for the city. He joined the city of FRISCO as the Strategic Services Manager in the city's manager office in June 2015. During his time in FRISCO, he has been assigned to work in various departments and roles. As Principal Program Manager at Microsoft in the Azure IoT team, Olivier has worked in the IoT space for as long as he can remember, first as an embedded developer and consultant, then as a technical evangelist for the Microsoft organization. He also spent 3 years in Microsoft Open Technologies, engaging with open source communities on topics going from web and JavaScript to gaming and IoT. As an enterprise solution engineer with T-Mobile, Bob brings over 30 years of senior management experience in sales and marketing. His current role as a technology and business consultant for government and enterprise accounts involves, many different aspects of mobility technology and client support. So welcome, Andrea, Jason, Olivier, and Bob. And now let's kick off our discussion. The last few years have seen the Internet of Things vision grow from a theoretical concept to a major priority for many organizations. As companies integrate IoT devices into their network infrastructures, they're looking for new ways to use and manage the data they collect. Actually, if we look at recent reports and data, it shows that by 2025, there will be more than 55 billion connected devices worldwide, 75% of which will be connected on an IoT platform. IDC estimates also data generated from connected IoT devices to be 73 zettabytes by 2025, growing from 18 zettabytes in 2019. By 2025, there will be 150,000 IoT devices connecting to the internet per minute. I think this is fantastic, just to see these numbers. And IoT solutions have also the potential to generate a 4 to 11 trillion in economic value by 2025, depending on the reports and forecasts. So why, from your perspective, are we entering in a new era for IoT, and how does the combination of 5G, edge, and AI bring enormous opportunity for IoT to become a reality? Maybe we start with you, Olivier.
Of course, thanks, Claire. I've been in, as you were saying, in the industry of embedded development mostly for as long as I can remember, which is over 20 years. I like to compare the way IoT is evolving or has evolved to a pendulum, where far back we're talking about making devices intelligent, right? That was the beginning of the embedded space, where we were starting to bring software down to microcontrollers, making your car, making your consumer devices more intelligent, but also making some of these industrial machines more intelligent. Then we went on to the era of cloud, and cloud arrived, and all the intelligence of the applications had to be on the cloud, and everything happened there. Devices were just mere, dumb stuff, right? And now we're seeing an inversion of that pendulum, where it's kind of like getting in the middle, where you are able now, thanks to the emerging or now mature technology for connectivity, for AI at the edge, AI itself, and IoT as a platform, reach such a maturity that you can now start distributing intelligently that intelligence that builds applications. And this is something that took time to settle, but from my experience perspective, is now settling, meaning that you can think of applications that are distributed all the way down to the edge, while in the past it was either or. It was like either on the device itself or all the way up in the cloud. Now you can leverage connectivity to bring very heavy workloads down to the edge. But then when there's no connectivity, you can also have the device act on its own, and the cloud itself report on the latest known state. So it's these platforms, these technologies that are now getting to a level of maturity that is high enough for getting to production, allow these new kind of scenarios. That's to me, the main point here. I do see IoT and AI as enablers for the rest of the solution and applications, and that's what I think is the basis of the actual IoT state and where we're going.
Thanks, Olivier. Bob, what about your perspectives?
Yeah, so I was just saying that I think that the question is really interesting, because it's why are we moving to a new era, right? So who's the we? We is you, we is us at T-Mobile, we is Microsoft. So, basically, that's the important thing to ask and to try and look at, moving forward. So yeah, I mean, Olivier has all those really good information about the platforms and about, the hardware and software and things of that sort, and connectivity importance. And obviously, from my perspective at T-Mobile, connectivity is a big deal. 5G, 4G, LTE, narrowband IoT, the ability to connect all of these devices. And by having all of these things juxtaposed, having them all pulling together, provides that additional growth engine. It helps us better find new things to do with our Internet of Things, right? So the things that we have now, the billions of things that are out there already, have been defined. But what about the many billions of things other than that are not defined yet? So that's all that's part of this whole new era for IoT, because it's really, innovation based. It's, trying to find new things, how to do things better and how to do new things, how to enable operational controls and data collection so you can provide your organizations with actionable intelligence that improves your operations, your financial outcomes, and grows the business or grows the service in the business itself. So those are some of the things that we look at. And basically, you might be able to tell I am a little bit more on the sales side than the technical side. But one of the things that we look at is in growing this, how you do things better translates to cost reduction, process efficiencies, energy consumption improvement, meeting regulatory compliance, things of that nature. And also doing new things, business growth, new business and operational models. So that's the thing about this, is that no one knows, all the different applications and solutions that are going to be available over time. And that's why it's going to be growing from 13 billion today globally to over 30 billion in 2025, because there's going to be more and more of these new things that are coming out that help emphasize that, improve safety and security, provide enhanced customer service. But one of the things that was brought up, and obviously the core business at T-Mobile, is connectivity. So understanding the most cost-effective and purpose-effective connection technology available is also helping move that forward, because now there's more options for connectivity. I mean, obviously we have cellular connectivity, Wi-Fi is also available, LoRa, other technologies, including wired technology. But with 5G, it changes the game as far as, throughput capabilities, speed, very low latencies. And so if you have an autonomous car, then you definitely want it to respond quickly. You don't want it to take 2 or 3 seconds to make an adjustment. You want it to be able to do that in 5 to 10 milliseconds. So those are the types of things that 5G can bring. But on the other hand, 5G isn't the cheapest way of putting together a connectivity solution, because the hardware, the components, the modules are a little more expensive, and the service is typically a little bit more expensive because you're using more data. But narrowband IoT and other components that support the low bandwidth requirement, the low speed, latency not being an issue. So if you have a agricultural sensor in a cornfield, you don't have to have that really wicked fast, quick response. All you really need to do is to be able to take those environmental readings for temperature, barometer, humidity, whatever it happens to be, every hour or so. So I think it's really amazing at how we're going to be able to continue to move forward with these different technologies that are based on the IoT platforms that are out there, all the way to the edge and to the cloud. So it's a very exciting time to be in this industry.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, and as you say, it goes much beyond connectivity. It's really a play, an ecosystem play, and what we see right now is that the adoption of IoT is really accelerating and increasing, with many different applications. And what we call the Industry 4.0 era, so this intelligent IoT. So it's the reason why it's a new era for IoT, accelerated definitely by these next generation networks and the power of AI. We can mention and highlight many use cases, such as troubleshooting using digital twins, or AR remote assistance, or real-time video analytics. You mentioned the connected cars. So there are both, there are a lot of use cases in smart manufacturing in our consumer life. I would be very interested to hear also from Jason and Andrea, what are for you the main IoT use cases that you would highlight today as either being real ones, concrete ones, or emerging ones that will bring growth opportunities for our businesses and our society? Jason, you want to start?
Sure, I'll start. And I want to second what Olivier and Bob have said about enabling. Really, that's what we're looking for. And understanding that a municipality, a city like ours, we're usually somewhat late adopters. We look at as we bring technology on, traditionally, we wait until it's being tested in the private sector, and then we look to capitalize on some of that utility. The city of FRISCO, we try to be a little bit forward thinking. We try to be a little bit aggressive when it comes to IT and innovation. So we really look at organic innovation, and our start with, with working with our partners, we really look at trying to find solutions to current issues or products, services that can expand and enable us to continue to be highly efficient and productive. And so looking at test case, we have quite a few things in traffic and engineering, traffic management. We have partnerships with Audi, where it's sensors that are communicating with traffic signals and making things more efficient and safer for drivers. We have several things like that that we're working on. We're looking at emerging sensors and technology in our municipal buildings, looking at people counting. There's a lot of manual activities that we've had. Even during COVID, we noticed that we're spending a lot of time and effort with individuals on manual, repeatable things. And so we're looking at the possibility of using some sensors, some technology, some IoT things to kind of eliminate some of those things so people are free to do other activities. And that's really the gist of it for us, is using the technology, deploying it in a smart way, so that way we can reduce some of that load on individuals, but we can also continue to do what we need to do, our core business services. So that's what we're really looking at. We have a lot of things in the connected vehicles and fleet services, looking at our fleet, making sure that we can do fleet maintenance and early warning for vehicles. And so we're also looking at that. But further on, emerging, we're also looking at how can we start to deliver services to citizens. Traffic and innovation is one of our biggest pieces. How do we get more cars off the road? And how do we do that is by partnering with individuals that are bringing services directly to people. So we can talk a little bit more about some of those specific test uses that we have, but we're looking at a lot of different things, and hopefully will deploy. Some of them are deployed now and some of them will be deployed in the future, but it's really harkening back on what Olivier and Bob said. It's really the expansion of services that we're trying to use and using this technology to do so.
So I tend to think very simply, and I think the reason we're seeing the IoT devices start to be far more prolific is because we can, right? The infrastructure, the technology is now here, it's available. And I think, as Bob stated, it's not without cost, right? It's expensive for our communication service providers to actually make these upgrades. And so what they have to look at is, how do I monetize this, right? That there really are two drivers that they look at, and it's, how do I save money or how do I make money? And I think, as we think about the use cases, we start to think about, how do businesses actually either make money or do they save money? And I think, Jason, you talked about saving resource time, and, human capital is really important. And so if you think about those as categories of thinking that we're going through in the businesses, what are some of those true use cases, right? And I think, Jason, you talked about some of those from a municipality perspective, but think about it from a consumer perspective, right? We've seen a really explosion of the number of IoT devices that are accessible to us as consumers. Just think about something as simple as an Echo device or a Google device in our home, or a Ring camera, or a spotlight, or a doorbell. Well, Amazon, so we're going to talk about some emerging things. One of the things that Amazon is doing is Amazon is building neighborhood mesh networks with their devices that are already in our homes. And so it's called Amazon Sidewalk, and it actually started turning on as of June, so very recently. And what the Ring cameras and Echo devices are now being used is to create an opt-out mesh network. Now, these are certainly capped in terms of the amount of usage, right? Because you don't want to not be able to use it if you bought it, but to be able to have that from an opt-out perspective. So keep an eye on that, because that's kind of a little bit mind-blowing. And Amazon, of course, has promised data privacy and all of that cool stuff. And so that's something that both excites me and kind of frightens me, quite frankly, that someone could be using my Echo device or my Ring camera, as an opt-in. Obviously, Amazon is going to figure out how to do this for all of us as consumers. But that's something that's really innovative with devices that we're already using in one capacity, but maybe there's some availability on those devices to do something new. So I think it's actually quite creative. Another one in more of a business context, and I can see how, Jason, in your world from a municipality perspective, this concept of combining 360-degree camera views with AI for the construction industry, right? If you think about walking around a construction site with a 360-degree camera, that's an IoT device connecting back into the network to provide shareable immersive modeling within minutes to say, is this the view we're looking for? Do we want a window here? Do we want a window there? How does that change, kind of on the fly in the construction industry? And even think about from a connectivity perspective, if you're doing it in a build, from an industrial building perspective, perhaps it's going to be a manufacturing site. You want to make sure that you have the accessibility to a 5G device to actually allow for that latency benefit that you're going to get with this new construction. So those are just a couple of the two kind of innovative things that are coming. There's some other stuff. I think we all saw the eyeglasses that were out there, I think a couple of years ago. They're back, right? These are head-mounted devices. The Ray-Ban stories, are these? It's a partnership with a glasses company, and they're branded Ray-Ban, and they have cameras. They look almost identical to the old Ray-Ban glasses, and so now they're going to have these cameras. So I think we're starting to see these head-mounted smart devices coming back in. That's going to put a lot more need out there on the bandwidth out there. Again, as Bob was saying, whether it's wireless, broadband, wired, whatever it is, obviously those are going to be wireless. But so those are just a couple of the, examples of the things that are going to be starting to continue to see this IoT device kind of explosion. There's a lot going on out there. So that's my perspective, Claire.
Thanks, Andrea. That's awesome, and we could mention many more. With smart agriculture.
So many more. Yeah.
Healthcare. So I think so. Please jump in if you want to highlight some use cases like this. I think we are all now, connected, as you say. And actually, Andrea, you made a very, very interesting point about privacy, security, all these things. So I think this is a key component also of how we will secure the growth of IoT, both for enterprises and, us as citizens and consumers. Right. And it brings me to the next question. So what, from your perspective, are the three challenges or barriers? I don't like to talk so much about barriers because we have a great opportunity just in front of us, but what are the three challenges that you see for either communication service providers, equipment or sensors providers or enterprises that they could face, to win in this race to the new Industry 4.0 era? Olivier, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, definitely. There are like a lot, I would say, and you were saying that we don't want to be negative, but there are what we can definitely call challenges. There is one key factor to how IoT and AI are evolving as enablers to all these scenarios we just described, which is the pace at which they are evolving and are developed. That pace is impressive. Like in the last few years, we've seen technologies and microcontrollers all the way up to the cloud evolving super fast. The technology for connectivity has evolved super fast as well. And the cycles in the industry, whether they are in smart cities or industrial automation or all of these scenarios that are not consumer scenarios, have development cycles that are way longer than these nascent technologies that are AI, IoT connectivity. And so these are evolving so fast that when you want to use them as enablers to enhance your business cost saving and so on, well, you are first to be daunted by the amount of things that are coming your way. And, hey, you need to connect these devices. You need to think about security. You need to think about, who's going to use that device and how and so on. You need to use that AI type of thing up there, and you need to get that, IP from that other company and mix it in there and so on. And so for people who are used to develop applications a certain way with certain technologies, now they're invited or told that they need to integrate IoT, they need to integrate AI, they need to integrate the management of these devices over connectivity, provisioning, securing, and so on. And so they start to have to deal with technology they're not familiar with that evolves super fast. So that's something that for these technologists is very daunting, is complex. They need to start collaborating way more with other domains. A software engineer now has to work with a hardware designer. They have to work with a data scientist. They have to work with a chemist. They have to work with a bunch of different engineers and people that they were not used to. They need to talk to the operators to optimize the applications and how they use and so on. And so we are at a stage where everyone's learning about all of that. the technologies themselves are not hard to implement if you take them one at a time, but now we're combining them. Now they come all together, and you have to combine all of these together. So it's like, wow, what's going on here? I think this is based on my interaction with technical people, developers, architects on almost a daily basis. I see that all the time where people are just like, I don't know where to start. That's way too much. And there's so many things I need to think about. And very often we, the Microsoft, the Amazons, the other, we're pointing at key features that we think are enabling or helping them. But sometimes we're scaring them. Hey, think about security. It's super important not to have your devices in the wild and being accessed or whatnot. And so we are scaring them even more. And so I like to approach things in a more simple way, and very often reassure our customers and our partners in the fact that there's no rocket science here. It's just a combination of many things that can be understood and dealt with individually that now needs to be combined. And so what we're striving at, and I think what platform developers and providers will be bringing to the table, is a way to abstract some of that complexity, to deliver all of these features in a more consumable way for the industry in general. And I think we definitely ought to simplify IoT, I would say, to make it a reality. And I know on the connectivity side of things, it's the same story. We talked about, narrowband IoT versus 5G. And so we need to educate people in a simple way so that they understand how to use all these technologies together to build their solutions.
Yes, I think this is a great point. Jason, do you want to also add something about it? Because so we are talking about security, privacy, etc. And I do think that platforms have to be built for IoT by design, I would say. It's not, it's not to react afterwards, but really to anticipate all these things. What do you see, as Chief Innovation Officer for FRISCO as a municipality? What would be do you see a role also for regulators or standardization bodies to help with this?
Sure. I think Olivier made a good point. We do have challenges in regards to security and other things, but he made a really good point about education. I heard him say education. And I think that might be one of our biggest pieces, is understanding that we need to be able to educate in regards to this emerging technology. There's so much of it there. And as Olivier mentioned, that we are evolving so quickly that in many cases, by the time we are able to implement something, it's already on version 2. And sometimes we lag behind. My role, I consider to be, is almost like the hub for this innovation as it comes in. We are able to distill it and understand exactly what the test case is, and we're able to kind of deploy it at that. So we define the use, and we're able to put it in action. And I think that might be one of the key challenges, is in many times, if my cohorts, my partners aren't thinking outside of, I do my standard job the way I do it, and I don't really need a sensor. I don't need any technology to help me with that. Now I'm helping them understand all the possibilities that we have in using this technology and using IoT, and that how we can adapt our current workplace to accept technology and actually make our workspace better. I could actually show you quickly an example. I got this week. These are JITA personal carry follow robots, and you might be able to see it. I have, if you can see that right there, I have 3 of them, and you might have seen them in airports. You might have seen them in other municipalities. But we're going to pilot these robots next week, start like a month trial or 2-month trial with them in each department, and actually see the test cases and the test uses that we have. But this is a perfect example of, we have technology, we can deploy the technology. Now it's up to us to help adapt that to specific use cases, and we can do that. We're thinking forward, and we're trying to find ways that we can assist our employees. But at the end of the day, our main goal is to be more efficient and productive for our citizens. So that's what we're trying to do.
And if I may add, I think, Jason, you made a very important point here. Very often as technologists, we tend to push technology for the sake of technology. Hey, you can do that, so you should do it. And I think I've got a good story and anecdote around the new Microsoft campus that we're building. This huge new campus that's being built here in the Seattle area by Microsoft. And we are, as the IoT team, we're engaging on a daily basis with the teams working on these buildings. And we're just like, hey, yes, you should definitely enable that, put all these sensors and so on. And one thing that people like Jason bring us back to reality, telling us things such as, hey, you know what, this building has to leave for like the next 30 years. Will your sensor technology last that long? We are telling them, hey, you need to cable for all of that. And then they're just like, well, there's an additional cost. I need to finalize my blueprints today, even if the building is going to come out in 2 years from now. And what you tell me today, is what it's going to be. And so I cannot change my plans at the moment the building is going to come out of ground, later on. And so we're brought back to the reality. And by us educating people on technology, but by us being also educated on where these technology will be used, which are new to us as well, is super important, and definitely appreciate the work that people like Jason are doing, grounding us in reality while technology is going so fast.
Yeah, thanks, Olivier. And as you said, it's really a combination of these technologies, a combination, of all these talents, that will ease the adoption of IoT. Education is a key lever too, but we are seeing a lot of initiatives, 5G labs, innovation labs, to co-create, these new use cases. How would you qualify the importance of ecosystems and the role of IoT platforms today to serve this, I would say, digital platform economy promise? Bob, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So I mean, that's a really important question, because ecosystems and IoT platforms are necessary to be able to continue to advance the technology, right? So it's a matter of, it takes a village, right? So Microsoft, Nokia, T-Mobile, Google, Apple, and other players, in all different types of industries are going to have to collaborate and to work together to be able to build out a cost-effective systems that produce the types of outcomes that we hope to get from a strategic perspective. So basically, ecosystems and IoT platforms you can look at as internal and external. I mean, internal meaning that companies have their own ecosystems that are going to be helping build within the company the IoT offerings for those that are in the industry, and external for bringing in those entrepreneurs and those startup companies and the universities and others. They're coming up with all these new innovative ideas and new areas of interest where you can facilitate innovation and develop viable market solutions that are, in fact, is the question asked, accelerating the digital platform economy in all areas of use cases, where data acquisition, operational controls apply, and the ability to, further the different interests of, the technological use of the applications. So one of the things that we're doing at T-Mobile from an internal perspective is that we built out a whole group, several groups and several divisions that are focused on IoT. So we have a group that goes out and works with clients and customers, like Dr. Cooley in City of FRISCO, for example, to try and find out more about what we can do to help support the things that they're doing and the way that they're conducting new business, trying to develop these new platforms. We also have our own group, product management, product marketing, product development, who are bringing in new specific product offerings with hardware and software and connectivity bundled, combined, into the T-Mobile ecosystem, our own platform. But we're also trying to bring in other partners by standardizing and certifying components. So modular modem components, chipsets, things of that sort that need to be PTCRB certified, FCC certified, and ultimately certified on our network for being able to actually show that it'll perform properly on the network, are all part of that as well. So by doing these certifications on components, we can go to customers that are looking to develop their own new programs and products that they're going to use within their organization, and help them by finding the right components to be able to get the certifications done more quickly and easily. So that's all part of what we can do directly. But indirectly, we also participate in a lot of outside organizations. So for example, we have a group called T-Mobile Ventures, and we help fund and basically, quote, supercharge the 5G network, unquote, relating to coverage, speed, and access for IoT applications. So we help with engineering expertise, go-to-market infrastructure support, investment, backing, and developing tests to bring the new products to the market with 5G products. So we're trying to encourage outside parties, other potential partners, to provide that type of services for them. We also participate in the 5G Open Innovation Lab, which is a global ecosystem of developers, enterprises, academics, government institutions. And that basically, again, invests in an ongoing group of early, late-stage startup companies that are providing new technology to enable application innovation for hardware, software, cloud, and edge computing as well, with the connectivity. And so I guess we have several other groups, but we also work, I guess one that is front and center for us is what we call the Curiosity Lab at Peachtree Corners. So it's a collaboration with Georgia Institute of Technology. And it's basically designed as an incubator program to support growth and development of entrepreneurs and startups. So we're really into getting that part of the business going. So you plant the seeds early, then you can harvest the fruit later. And basically, if the fruit's out there for everyone to pick, then it makes it so much better for all of us to be able to get these advancements and get the opportunity to find out what's happening and to help fuel the innovation that's available out there, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of companies that have the ability to do this, and it's going to have social impact. It's going to be able to change our economy and change the way that people live and use resources internationally.
Thank you, Bob. And I really do think that yes, ecosystems are very, very important to develop and grow this IoT industry and potential. And just think, and maybe Andrea, you can also share your thoughts about it. And you said it's all about also how we save money, how we make money. I think this is a very good point. So talking about ecosystems that are labs or innovation centers with multiple companies, who from your perspective will win?
Yeah. So from an ecosystem perspective, I think there's also a lack of true definition of what is an ecosystem, right? So is it partners? Is it a group of alliances? Is it the ecosystem of a CSP, like a T-Mobile or like a Microsoft? Is it that ecosystem, or is it the ecosystem of an amalgamation of providers that are going after smart irrigation systems for farming, right? So I think ecosystem unto itself has still a lot of room to be defined. And when we do that, we have to also have standards, right? Because if we're just all coding and developing without the ability for interoperability, the ecosystem of the past was all based on interoperability. The ecosystem of the future is going to be based on interoperability, right? So if I think we have to really understand, are there standards? And right now there are not a lot of standards, right? There are some coding standards and other types of aspects, but I think there's a real, an unknown right now as to who's going to define these standards and who sets the bar. Is it going to be an open source type of standard, which is beneficial, but also is fraught with its own challenges? And so I'm going to use an example of a tight ecosystem in terms of an IoT device that, if any of you have children, many of the teenage boys and girls have played Fortnite, right? And Fortnite will suck the bandwidth out of your life if you allow it to. If these kids have Fortnite weekends and they're just pulling down the bandwidth, you cannot be watching Netflix or Amazon Prime if your kids are playing Fortnite, right? And so that's going to put a bit of a gasp on the system. And so what Fortnite is doing to stay relevant, because gaming gets hot and cold, right? Kids get in and out of, is it cool? Is it not cool anymore? And so two things that Fortnite has done, which I find amazing, tapping into their ecosystem, right? They're expanding their ecosystem right now. And again, using their IoT device to become a platform, right? And then they're going to try to set a standard. This is all, again, fairly new stuff. So they're creating immersive events. So in August this year, they did an Ariana Grande concert in Fortnite. I mean, how cool is that? You're able to have Ariana Grande sing just to you. And again, in the ecosystem, partnering with an artist, partnering with, other entities to be able to use the Fortnite platform, right, to create its own little ecosystem. So I think, again, it goes back to how are we going to define ecosystem? So on the vein of, by the way, I'm not shilling for Fortnite, but Fortnite is also branching out. So they're trying to stay relevant. They've actually partnered with Time Magazine to build an immersive historical experience with gaming in it. And they're doing things like having visitors come to the site to hear the 17-minute speech, and learn more about the civil rights movement and embody that MLK principle with doing some gaming. And so again, I think we have to really ask ourselves, what is the platform, right? Is it for smart cities? Is it for smart farming? Is it for smart gaming? And so I think it's going to all come down to how do they interoperate and allow for the growth of that ecosystem in ways that, frankly, I don't think we can imagine yet. So I think that's the opportunity here. And do we as providers to the CSPs and to the enterprises to allow for ubiquitous access, whether it's wireless or broadband or wired, anything of that nature, to allow for this ecosystem to continue to expand. But I think without standards, and I'm not sure governance is necessarily required, but it's going to start to become a relevant topic because of security and other types of aspects. So that's my perspective. I think we have to define what is an ecosystem and who actually governs it, sets the standards for it, allows for that interoperability. And interoperability in the technology space has been an ongoing challenge for the past, and I think it will continue to be a challenge in the future. So anyway, that's my perspective, Claire.
Thanks, Andrea.
I just wanted to jump in real quick because I thought Andrea would mention it, and I knew she would. And at the end, she said the word governance. And when we go down the road of ecosystems, and you're spot on again of what is an ecosystem? Is it a partnership with the university that can do data analytics? Is it a partner with the Economic Development Corporation like we have a strong partnership with our EDC, and we're pumping out innovation and piloting solutions. But the governance piece is our key challenge right now, because we want to adapt and we want to be a quick adopter of technology and IoT, but at the same time, there are some challenges, there are some foundational issues that we have to address prior to getting so far, like who controls it, how much access do they have, and data sharing and everything else. So that the governance piece is one that we are going down that road right now as we are attempting to build our fully fledged ecosystem, but the governance is our top priority right now. And we're actually working in that process right now, but it is a challenge. And I think we all have mentioned multiple times of how quickly everything is evolving. And so that governance and the ability to adapt and leave some flexibility is very important. So that's what we're working on right now. It's a challenge for sure.
And I think with that governance in that vein, I mentioned the interoperability, right? So I use interoperability fairly broadly, right? Because if you think about the speed to access an ecosystem, the speed to put something on it, the speed to expand it, who dictates that? Right. So a bit of that's governance, a bit of that is the standards, and a bit of it is ease, right? If we have proprietary, hard-coded, no APIs, right, to access this, how are we going to spin it up quickly and allow for the change that's happening to be absorbed and to be harnessed, right? Because if we can't get this stuff up quickly and automate it, we're going to get sucked into, I think, Bob, you had mentioned it earlier, the human capital aspect of it. Humans cannot operate the environment of the future, right? It's going to have to be automated, and it's going to have to allow for speed, right? And I think speed with some controls, right? Because otherwise we could allow for too much access and therefore have no governance or lack of governance, and then have security issues, and then we start having breaches and our data gets accessed and everybody's going to kind of pull back, right? So that's going to just hinder us. So anyway.
That's a great discussion, and actually, I think you made the conclusion. So I just wanted to ask you all, just to conclude this this talk, unleashing the future of IoT. So we've highlighted these challenges. In a few words, what would be your conclusion about it?
So I think that, you know, there's stuff that's going to happen in IoT that we're not even imagining right now, right? I think the power of 5G as it interchanges, and you know, we've all seen this with COVID, right? It's wireless is just a component of it. It's the wired and the broadband environments, and that I think it's that linking, how those things are going to be woven together, that's going to really allow for IoT devices. Think about handoffs, right? You have, you know, I have this Aura ring, and it tells me all my biometric data, right? It tells me how I sleep, and when I'm out going on a walk and I switch over to a different environment, you know, how is it going to interoperate? So it moves from, you know, my home Wi-Fi into the wireless when I want to sync up and actually track what's happening. So that handoff has to be smoothed out, and we're seeing that the consumer's demanding that. So I think, you know, I'm certainly not carrying a crystal ball, so I can't predict what's going to happen, but I can predict that there's going to be things that are happening in IoT going forward that we're not even imagining yet. That's my perspective.
Olivier.
I think that coming back to the discussions around education, around the pace at which technology is evolving, IoT is happening in the sense of, you know, it's an enabler. It's yet another technology that will enable tons of new scenarios. AI is happening as an enabler as well. Connectivity is happening as an enabler as well. And so now the sky is the limit in terms of what people will try and build with all of that. We talked about the necessity to educate people. We talked about the necessity to be kept on check when it comes to, you know, security, privacy, and things like that. I believe that we switched to, you were talking about the new era. I think it's not the new era of IoT, it's the new era of technology. We basically went from, you know, second gear to fourth or fifth, you know, immediately, instantly. It was like boom, boom. And then there are other things like, you know, they're changing environmentally, you know, pandemics and things like that, that force us to get together and find solutions rapidly. In the consumer space, standards have never been found to solve the home automation problem, right? So there's no standards, walled gardens all over the place. But guess what? Because there's a pandemic, now we need to sort out the smart building problem. And as a matter of fact, we'll sort it out because there is a forcing factor, which is, you know, we need to save lives. And so I do trust that, you know, we as an industry are coming together with the governments, with the citizens. Our cultures are evolving super fast as well to live in that new era of technology, which is way faster paced and you know, open to lots of new solutions and imaginations.
Bob and Jason, do you want also to share a few words as a conclusion, and we will move afterwards to the questions we have. I think we have a few.
Sure, I'll share, and I think I'll just harken back to what everyone else has said is, you know, things are moving very quickly and evolving even quicker. And so for a municipality like ours, we like to position ourselves as, and I've mentioned this before, and it was mentioned Monday at our staff meeting, our entire city is almost like a test bed, and that's the way we want it to be. We want to be an operation where pilot projects feel welcome here. I'll pilot anything, just about anything that's safe. We'll give it a shot. And because we want to be able to be on the next curve, on the next wave of innovation, and really we're looking at it to focus specifically on how can we make what we do here in the City Hall more efficient and more productive, but ultimately we're able to deliver a higher level of service to the citizens. And that's what we're trying to do. And we are, looking for our partners. We have our partners with T-Mobile and others, but we're looking for those solutions. And so we're open to it. And I think it's a mindset that we have, but we're trying to be aggressive and using the resources of our partnerships and trying to build that ecosystem that we can really stand upon and actually grow with. So it's something that we're looking forward to, and we're continuing to move in that direction. It's great.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with Andrea. She had a lot of really good information, everyone for that matter. But one of the things I really believe that we're in the wild west of IoT, right? I mean, this is a huge market driver. There's billions and billions and billions of dollars driving this industry. And there's everyone who wants to get access to it, right? Anyone who can come up with an idea to put something in a device with software that can connect to a network, that can provide some type of service that provides a source of income. So it's going to be a real crazy show. Integration is going to be a big deal, interoperability, all of that. But there's going to be a lot of groups and companies out there that are going to look for what they can do fast, what they can do clean, and what they can maybe do in a proprietary way to make a difference. But it's going to eventually come to the point where you do have to have those types of interactive services and deal with standards, because there's going to be a lot of additional, I guess, forces in play that are going to require that.
Thanks a lot, Bob. And I think we've covered a lot. Thank you for the great discussion. It's huge. And we can see through the discussion, all the great opportunities that we have just in front of us, and the need to reinvent ourselves to bring this, to life. I'm just checking the questions here. So, Erin, I think I am checking the chat right now. So there was Russ sharing.
I think Olivier did a great job of answering for us. Do we have any other questions from the audience?
I have this one from Matt. So who will set the standards to IoT? Will it be trade groups or the government? So
I think it'll be a combination. I think, I think there will be open source that will drive a standards. And then I think at some point, I think governments have been reticent to set standards unless they're going to have true, implications on kind of the overall infrastructure. And so I think that could come over time, but I still think the IoT environments are still so nascent that I think there's a reticence to over control or over govern at this point. So at least I think the standard groups are going to have to come from, maybe not even just the trade groups, but I think from some of either the communities or the ecosystems themselves. At least that's what I'm saying here. I don't know, Bob or Olivier or Jason, what do you think?
I do agree with you, and you mentioned open source a couple times, which is interesting because that's very much like developers driven. That's the equivalent in the technology world too, when citizens take things in charge and do things on their own and do influence the outcomes. I think what we're seeing is the way standards have been, and the web is a good example of that, where it took time for industries and companies to get together and end up creating standards, disagreeing, and Microsoft was part of that. Big fights with Google, it's like public knowledge. I think we are at the point where it's totally different. Now we work with Google on open source projects. It accelerates the innovation. It opens it up to more participants. There's less bureaucracy, there's less slowness. However, we need to be, and I was responding to one of the questions, we need to be kept accountable. Private sector, we are driven by business, right? And the economics. And so we need to be kept accountable, by citizens, by governments who regulate. And so we need to go by the regulations, and that's super important. And building standards, building technologies, with communities as communities that abide by these regulations. And I think it's key. I think it's super important. That what will allow us to keep the pace and not end up in dramatic scenarios like we see in futuristic movies that we don't want to land into. And I think we won't, because because we end up being responsible as a community, and enterprises, I think, are changing that culture regarding all of that. We're no longer in the 80s or 90s where it was all about the dollars. It's still there. Yes, reality is that we need to make money, but at the end of the day, we have this responsibility, this community approach to things that will allow us to build these quote unquote de facto standards that will be community built through open source, open standards, and with the help of the regulators as well.
Well, I'll say this about the connectivity. It's all standards. So when it comes to actual deployment and implementation infrastructure, 5G is a standard. So that was one of the things that, is easy to work through on our side, is that, and that's why we certify hardware on our network and components, because, you had to make those standards work. The FCC gets involved, and the carriers get involved, so it makes it pretty cut and dry as far as connectivity. Where there's more leeway or there's more latitude is that the standards are in the connectivity, physical connectivity and the protocols, but pricing, how you bundle pricing, how do you look at different ways of financing the connectivity requirements, that all becomes much more of a example of why you want to maximize your and optimize your connections, because you may need encryption, you may need private VPNs, or maybe other services that are required for that connectivity for your IoT solution that be in addition to the standard 5G connection for data transfer.
Yes, thanks, Bob. And actually, if I look at the questions, there are a lot of questions around, privacy, security, and the role of the regulatory bodies. So while I love the open source issue, how does a regulatory body also protect the systems with privacy? And I know, Olivier, you already answered also about this. There was also a comment, not really a question, around automation. So I think, Andrea, you mentioned this. Yes, that IoT, OT, M2M solutions, regardless of use case, need to be easy to set up and maintain, zero touch, automated, etc. So yes.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that interoperability, right? If you're gonna if someone coming into that ecosystem is gonna struggle to get connected into that ecosystem, it's gonna slow down the progress. And so I think we have to find it's not easy, right? Because when you're automating without standards and you're it's gonna be challenged. So I like someone actually put in that the EU and US are launching a trade technology council at the end of June. So ideally some standards and even, Jason, to your point, governance can come out of that. So anyway, that's I think there's a lot going on about automation, and that's a lot of the communication service providers are driving that because they want to be able to innovate so rapidly that they need to be able to provide automation in their networks and, frankly, security in their networks, right? Endpoint security is becoming a requirement. I think with all the breaches that have gone on, all the intrusions that are happening, mostly foreign, right? But not all, of course, but a lot of them are foreign. And so, protecting our networks, which will in turn protect the ecosystems, I think that's becoming vital. And I agree, Olivier. I think it's all of our responsibilities, private and, frankly, in the industrial side of the house.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrea. Go ahead, Erin.
Thank you. I think with that, since it is we're coming right up on 12:30, then this has been an excellent presentation, very informative. I think there's a lot to look forward to going, in the future, based on what everyone has said today. And we've reached the end of our time. So I want to thank Bob, Jason, Andrea, Olivier, and Claire for this exceptional program and for sharing your time and insights with our members and guests. So if you are an EACC member and would like to be introduced to any of our guests today, please send me an email and I'll be happy to facilitate the introduction. If you'd like to become a member, you may reach out to me or find information on our website. And be sure to join us in person on September 30th for Stammtisch with the German American Chamber of Commerce. We'll get into some networking outside if you're around the Dallas area. And also on November 4th, we welcome His Excellency Stavros Lambrinidis for the EACC Texas inaugural gala and EU Texas Economic Leadership Forum. So this concludes our Eurotech Talks program for today. A recording will be sent to those who registered on our website and will be available on the EACC YouTube channel in the next few days.